highly regarded around the world. However, one of the issues it has, both for its international PR and some of the people in that country, are some of its laws. So Singapore does have some of the harshest laws in the books. According to Business Week, you almost have a legal requirement to be courteous, and there are a lot of things outlawed that if you did here, we would just call you a jerk and go along with our day. However, things like chewing gum, littering, jaywalking, smoking, not flushing the toilet, public nudity will get you in trouble with the law, and the laws there are much more harsh. You can get very long sentences, you can get very large fines, and they're also completely fine with corporal punishment. That means caning, other kinds of physical punishment. It's not good. Not only are they harsh for things like these, however, they can be even more harsh for drug possession and drug selling. Back on the drugs. If you even have drugs in your system, you can get charged with possession. So you take some kind of drug and then you come into the country and it's just in your system for a few weeks. If they just do a random drug test, which they can do whenever they like, then you can get charged with possession and be sentenced to one of these very harsh fines. Or if you're actually a drug dealer, you can be capitally punished. You can be put to death. So they're very harsh. However, most Singaporeans don't have a big issue with this, and Singapore has one of the lowest crime rates in the world, which is saying something when chewing gum is a crime. So it seems to work well for the people. However, if you're going to open a business or live there, it's something you need to be very wary of. So I've gone over the history of the Singaporean government, I've gone over the government itself, and I've gone over pertinent laws for doing business and living here. And now we're going to talk about the economy.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alex, and I'm the Dean of Students at the NUS Business School at the National University of Singapore. So today I kind of have a three-pronged approach about talking about the economy. First, we're going to paint an economic overview of the economy as a whole, and then we're going to analyze Singapore's trade practices as well as their market climate and their market environment. And lastly, we're going to go into the kind of barriers of entry that you might face as a business and also the cost of doing business in Singapore. So first off, Singapore is a free market economy, one of the most complex free market economies in the world, and we'll go into what that means in a little bit. Its currency is the Singapore dollar. It's the same dollar sign as the US dollar, and it's about 1.3 Singapore dollars to the US dollar. So, pretty similar. Its GDP sits at almost 300 billion, which is, according to the CIA World Factbook, like the 36th in the world. Something like that for such a small city-state is pretty impressive. Their unemployment rate is also an impressive 2%, and the inflation rate is 0.5% a year compared to the 1.5% on average in the last 5 years the U.S. has had fluctuations. And the income, or the median income per household is also pretty impressive. This is around 69,000 to 65,000 depending on the year, also very fluctuating. So now, the probably most important part of the Singapore economy is imports and exports. They make upwards of $280 billion in exports per year, and their trade to GDP ratio is 400 to 1, 400%. And what that statistic means is basically measures the significance of trade in an economy compared to their gross domestic product. And that's also the highest in the world. And so they have 4 major trade partners. The other city-state that's very close by, Hong Kong, and then China, Malaysia, and the United States. They are really big in pharmaceutical tech and petroleum tech, which would explain their 4 biggest exports, which are refined petroleum, integrated circuits for operating systems, computers themselves, and ethylene polymers for petroleum products. So the climate of the market, this graph represents, like I was talking about, the complexity. According to the Observatory of Economic Complexity, or the Economic Complexity Index, basically this takes all of the industry subjects and categories and shows how they intertwine and how they do business together and where all these points connect in different industries. It explains the economy as a whole and not just the sum of its parts. So great things. Singapore is the most pro-small business nation in the world. This is mostly due to their grant programs. They have a lot of, a lot of government-instituted grant programs for small businesses. So for trademarks or capital matching programs, and also their strong national reserve, one of the strongest in the world. It's said that it should be able to sustain the country for about 10 years of a recession. It is the second freest economy in the world and the number one least corrupt economy in the world. And its market for foreign investments is primarily invested by pharmaceutical companies and high-tech companies and biotech companies. And so at the end, the most important part as business people, education is important, culture is important, but the bottom line for you guys when you go overseas is the money. So this are potential run-ins you could have when taking your business to Singapore. The first thing, corporate tax is at 17% per annum around, which if you've started your business in the United States, that's pretty awesome. And for startups in Singapore, you actually are exempt from taxes if you don't turn over $30,000 in your first 2 years. So that's helpful. Problem is, even though the unemployment rate is 2%, Singapore, they emphasize education and specialized education. Unfortunately, that means that a lot of people are going into these high-tier jobs, and there's not a lot of low-tier labor, especially for hospitality and food and beverage. So it's lacking because everyone's becoming engineers and everyone's becoming these tech moguls. So no one really is doing the low-tier label. And it's kind of a catch-22 because the government also discourages importing foreign workers, and they actually levy and give you quotas if you bring in a certain amount of foreign workers, which is also a substantial cost to a business. And like I said, I was talking about the grant schemes. They're good, but the fiscal gain you get is pretty much where it ends. They're really complicated, and the government doesn't really give any kind of comprehensive educational system for these grant programs. So it kind of ends when they give you the money. You don't really, after that, if you were a foreign business, you could not even know about the programs that you could potentially receive. And also, the biggest part is the high physical overhead cost. Because it's a city-state, it's only about 700 square kilometers in its business district. Land is very expensive. They import almost all of their resources because there are no raw materials in the country, which is kept back from the trade model. They actually import almost twice as much than they export, and they're a huge exporter because it is so small and they have no resources. They have to import them. And so, like I said, yeah, land is very expensive, and that could be incurred cost. Also, it's not really conducive to fast growth as a foreign business because there are so many costs. And it's found that most companies do not use Singapore as a cash pot. They usually use it as a stepping stone to other Southeast Asian markets like Indonesia and China. So now we're going to now explain the people behind these numbers in our business culture.
Hello everyone, I'm Melissa. I'm a business manager in Singapore, and I will talk to you about the business culture, the communication styles, the business etiquette, and I will also conclude this presentation. So to go on with my first point, according to the Singapore Worldview, Singaporeans use English as the main language to talk between each other in the workforce. They also have this indirect non-verbal communication method that I will explain to you in a little bit in more detail. They also use formal business language between one another. They refer to the business titles and their family names, and the hierarchy is highly respected and acknowledged. And for Singaporeans, it is vital to restrain from facial expressions to avoid misunderstandings and offend business partners and avoid damaging the business relationship. So to start off with my first point, the nonverbal communication, Singaporeans rely a lot on face expression, tone of volume, and posture in order to determine how a person feels. They trust nonverbal communication more than the spoken word. They also use a lot of indirect phrases. They would rather say phrases such as I'll try, or I'll see what I can do instead of using the word no in order to keep the harmony and a good relationship with their business partners. And it is really important to understand that they do not understand the Western's ability to respond fast to questions when they are being asked. So this is considered a lack of respect. My second point is the business etiquette while meet and greeting with the Singaporean business people. According to the culture in Singapore, there are a lot of differences that must be acknowledged while you conduct a business meeting or greet business people in Singapore. If you want to conduct a business meeting in Singapore, you must set up an appointment with 2 weeks in advance and contact the person concerned by either cell phone, email, or fax. Singaporeans take punctuality as a virtue, so it's really important for you to always get to your meetings on time. And if you ever find yourself in a situation where you are meeting up with Singaporean business people, you must wait to be seated because there is a hierarchy seating chart that must always be followed. Since asking or questioning the authority is a taboo in Singapore, it is really important for you to encourage questions after your presentation and give a smile to your peers or business partners when a question is brought up in order to promote confidence. But also keep in mind that you must never disagree or criticize a senior's opinion because this might cause this must damage your business relationship and it can also affect it. Another good important point while conducting businesses in Singapore is the exchange of business cards. Singaporeans exchange business cards after their initial introductions, and they do so by using both hands. And after you receive the business card, you must examine the business card before putting it in your business card case. Business cards are really important and in Singapore's workforce because they indicate the way you will treat the person you're trying to make business with and their business relationship. So it's really important to treat them with respect. Going on, I will also talk about the etiquette while negotiating. And according to the Comissio Global, negotiations in Singapore are conducted in a really small pace. If you are conducting a negotiation meeting, you must send a list to your Singapore business partners of the people that will be attending this negotiation meeting. Also remember that Singaporeans are non-confrontational and they will always try to resolve your disputes and problems with calm. So any expressions of anger or impatience will damage your relationship. If a Singaporean is placed in the position of asking an important question, he or she will usually take a 15-second pause to think about the question and make up their mind to give up an answer. Finally, you must also take into consideration that Singaporeans' decisions are consensus-driven, and before getting up into a conclusion, there must be a final agreement. And for this, you have to take into consideration that they have this indirect communication style, and yes does not always mean that they are agreeing to your business proposals. So as a conclusion, SINA analyzed the education standards Singapore brings, the education standard Singapore brings to its community. Josh talked about the history leading up to Singapore's independence. Then Jenny explained Singapore's climate, the geography, and the business geography. Kayla went on and she talked about the business culture and defined the demographics, the identification, and socialism, and then Charles went on and talked about the government and the laws that might affect you, and Alex went on and talked about the economy and the different types of trades that you can do in Singapore. So overall, after our extensive research and analysis, we would like to recommend you to conduct business in Singapore. Thank you so much, and do you have any questions?